Manuela, a 14-year-old girl whose mother has died and whose father serves in the army, enters into an all-girls boarding school. Initially withdrawn and reluctant, Manuela begins to have strong romantic feelings for her teacher, Governess Fräulein von Bernberg, a woman who offers a maternal compassion and generosity underneath her initially stern exterior. Seeking the approval of her new teacher, a feeling shared by many of the students who find excitement in receiving a kiss before bedtime from Bernberg. It's the cold, callous, strict rulership of the school's headmistress, which makes living at the school with repressed, considerably scandalous emotions all the more challenging. This is Leontine Sagan's Mädchen in Uniform, an adaptation of the play Yesterday and Today by Christa Winslow, a daring and modern portrayal of queer representation during the early 1930s. The depictions of Sapphic longing and queer-coded imagery continues to be important today within queer cinema. The film's portrayal of the conflict between compassion and oppression, referred to in the film by the headmistress as discipline, as well as the persecution of queer people fueled by faith and a lack of empathy, serves as a damning criticism of prejudice, as well as a call for understanding towards the mental health struggle of victims of such bigoted chastisement. Considered one of the earliest examples of queer cinema, Mädchen in Uniform is a significant achievement at a time when empathy for the LGBTQ+ community was low, especially in 1930s Germany when the Sturmabteilung was in power, a paramilitary wing of the Nazi Party which aided in Hitler's eventual gain of power. With fascism and censorship on the rise during this time period, it's quite honestly a miracle that a film like Mädchen in Uniform was both produced and then also survived the destruction of queer texts in Nazi Germany. Writing for the British Film Institute, Sarah Cleary acknowledges the unlikelihood of Mädchen in Uniform's survival during this horrific period, stating that not only was a female filmmaker at the helm, directing an all-female cast no less, but it is also one of the first truly significant queer films ever made. Despite several decades of censorship and suppression, it survived to become an enduring touchstone for generations of queer filmgoers, and the tropes and themes the film established came to define much of the LGBTIQ+ fiction and film that followed in its wake. Within Mädchen in Uniform's lasting legacy and the film's survival through fascism's reign, in other cases, such as the destruction of Magnus Hirschfeld's Institut für Sexualwissenschaft by the Nazis, sending LGBTQ+ healthcare understanding back by decades, demonstrates that queer voices were certainly silenced and killed. Mädchen in Uniform continues to remain a significant milestone for queer cinema at a time when queer erasure was commonplace, influencing generations of queer filmmakers who follow in the film's footsteps, and the film's survival even reinforcing the central message that compassion will triumph over oppression. Many LGBTQ viewers may instantly recognise just how surprisingly modern the queer coding is within Mädchen in Uniform, not necessarily external declarations of queerness, but the implication is as clear as day. At an all-girls school, the discussions away from teaching authorities steers towards which girls have a crush on Fräulein von Bernberg. The way girls may share love letters to each other. There's a celebration in which girls dance intimately with other girls, and even the romantic school play in which the female students play both masculine and feminine roles, declaring their love for each other. This play in particular certainly rings true in the present day when considering the love that femme and butch people may share for each other. Of course, these queer-coded scenes are even before we delve into Manuela's adoration for her teacher Bernberg. Mädchen in Uniform portrays a universal experience through a queer lens, the experience of the teenage crush. Moving closer towards Manuela's feelings for Bernberg, Sarah Cleary in her article further elaborates on how this relationship contributes to the universal experience of teen crush, stating that Mädchen in Uniform is, first and foremost, romantic, not only in its text but also in its form. From its impressionistic close-ups of a forlorn Manuela, reminiscent of Karl Dreyer's famous close-ups in his 1928 silent film The Passion of Joan of Arc, to its use of dissolves that imply an almost psychic connection between student and teacher, Sagan's direction often emphasises the ineffable over the material, and the unsaid over the permissible. What's even more impressive is the way it seems to have been consciously constructed to reflect a universal experience, the pangs and pain of a teenage crush, without ever losing sight of the narrative's queer specificity. The intimate close-ups, the frequent appeals to Bernberg for admiration, the joy which Manuela feels when Bernberg compliments her performance in the school play, the declaration that she thinks of Bernberg every time she wears Bernberg's petticoat undergarments, which the teacher shared due to the student not having her own. Manuela's feelings are unambiguous. But what Leontine Sagan's film does excellently is presents Bernberg's own compassion in a less clear light. Does Bernberg share favourable feelings towards Manuela, or does Bernberg simply offer a maternal compassion which Manuela lacks in her life due to the death of her mother? Is Bernberg already aware that she makes her students feel things for her? Fräulein von Bernberg's compassion, while ambiguous at times, especially when meshed with her initially stern impression, what isn't ambiguous is how her empathy resonates deeply with the students. Her compassion conflicts with the school headmistress's ethos of oppressive cold discipline, the headmistress's tunnel vision views representative of Germany's rising fascistic influence, as well as the wider ignorance of 1930s society in relation to queerness. Aside from the depiction of teenage love, Mädchen in Uniform is also a film about how compassion, empathy, and understanding will triumph over fascism. Fräulein von Bernberg literally declares that she wouldn't want to take a job as a teacher if she has to be cruel to the girls she cares for. In the face of the headmistress's strict oppressive rulership, it's Bernberg's consideration of the students which holds more resonance throughout the school, as the girls themselves are often united in their compassion towards each other. This becomes abundantly clear after Manuela declares her love for Bernberg, which is later reported to the headmistress. The headmistress plans to punish Manuela, and would even expel her, making Manuela homeless, if it wasn't for Manuela's close ties to the royal family, which the headmistress seeks approval from. The headmistress chastises Manuela with homophobic statements about how people like her should be banned from society, and how declaring same-sex love is sinful, a common attitude at the time of filming, especially considering the prominent prejudice within the rise of fascism. Within this scene, the headmistress represents wider bigotry, and Manuela's experience demonstrates the tragic consequences of a society unwilling to express compassion. Unfortunately, the necessity for compassion remains relevant, as many young queer people are made homeless, punished, and intentionally excluded, sometimes forced through invasive conversion practices, aided by hateful religious motivation, and recognised as a form of torture by Amnesty International. When Manuela is banned from seeing Bernberg again, with plans to isolate her from the other girls, the impact of this isolation takes its toll, and Manuela attempts to take her own life by jumping down from the top of the school stairwell. This is where the film's portrayal of compassion overrules hateful oppression. The empathy towards queerness is progressive in Mädchen in Uniform, but so is its consideration towards mental health struggle. As Manuela goes missing, the other girls express great concern and distress for her, worried she may hurt herself. Their worries aren't misguided, as when Manuela is found, she stands over the edge of the stairwell barrier ready to jump. It's not the headmistress's stringent control over harsh ruling that saves Manuela, but the compassion taught to the schoolgirls by Bernberg. In saving Manuela, the headmistress is forced to learn a harsh lesson in empathy. No school scandal would be bigger than a headmistress driving a student to death. A symbol for societal prejudice and even fascism becomes defeated by the unionization, the grand influence of care and consideration. If there's any lesson we must learn from Mädchen in Uniform, it's how essential empathy is towards the marginalized in face of oppression. In conclusion, it's almost miraculous that Leontine Sagan's Mädchen in Uniform survived the reign of fascist Germany, but it's essential that it has, as if to extend its message of compassion over oppression into the reality of the film's own survival. A surprisingly progressive film for its time period, Mädchen in Uniform remains relevant for as long as the continuation of persecuting marginalised groups perseveres. An essential lesbian classic, queer cinema aficionados everywhere need to seek this one out. A special thank you to my incredible tier Patreon supporter Gil, and my super tier Patreon supporters Constantine Bombelli, Jamie and Milkway.